All right, before we move on, I really hope all of you are tweeting about this summit. If not, please do it right now. Go to twitter.com, put the hashtag DOIS19, and tweet anything about the conference. You can tweet pictures, videos, your insights, your views, your what the thought process about each presentation that we're having. Please do make us trend today with the hashtag DOIS19. That is the hashtag that we are having for the DevOps India Summit 2019. And as I said, the top 2 Twitter accounts with the maximum tweets with the hashtag DOIS19 goes home with the Eco Show 5 and Kindle Paperweight Generation 10. All right, so please do make sure that you make us trend today. So before we move on, let me introduce you to our next speaker for the day. He has been with Microsoft for more than 20 years, working on developer products such as Silverlight, Visual Studio Tools, and Azure DevOps products. In his current role as a group product manager at Microsoft, he drives the vision, strategy, and direction of Azure pipelines and fully managed CI/CD software as a service. So ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and help me welcome on stage Mr. Gopinath CH.
You have mic? Okay. I'm just going to take a minute. They're just still setting it up. Sorry about it. Just give me 2 minutes.
Urge you to participate in this initiative as participants, sponsors, and partners. So, ladies and gentlemen, all the people out here who has been at the DevOps India Summit 2018, the last year edition? Can I see some hands up in the air? Oh, very few. So the rest of all of you this is the first time for you guys? All right, how are you finding it? Good? Thank you so much. Okay, how many of you have flown from outside of Bangalore? Wow, that's a big number. All right. So how many of you have come here from, I would say, North India? Anybody from North India? Okay, we have 3 hands. Where are you from, ma'am? Gurgaon. Okay, you've flown from Delhi, that means. And anyone else? Delhi? Delhi, so you have 3 people from Delhi. Are you from the same company? No, okay, you don't know each other. All right, that's amazing. And anybody else? All right, are you ready? Okay, fine. I'll talk to you about this in a very short while from now. For now, let's put your hands together once again for Mr. Gopinath CH.
Thank you. Topopal actually did a phenomenal job. He set it on fire with the stage with talking about all the best practices. The exact similar best practices are applicable to everybody. So I'm Gopinath. I am Group Product Manager in Microsoft, working on Azure DevOps products. Today I'm going to talk about why DevOps is important, but I'll give more practical examples with respect to how Microsoft actually changed the transformation inside the company. By adopting DevOps, we are still learning about it. I will give some practical case studies and experiences throughout our learning process. Before I start, first thing I want to talk about is Satya recently in an Inspire conference, he actually just talked about how is the industry changing, the tech industry and then the non-tech industry. In fact, 90% of the GDP is actually going to come from the non-tech, which is obvious because there are many non-tech companies that exist. But more importantly, what he just talked about is the hiring of software engineers growth is growing 11% year over year. 11% of the software engineers are getting hired. And more importantly, this is happening in non-tech. That means every non-tech industry is trying to get into tech. They need to have some IT. They need to have enterprise presence. That's what is happening. So it means there are more jobs, which is good. More jobs for software engineers, which is good. Obviously, more jobs for India, which is obviously good because there are a lot more software engineers in India. And it also means more jobs to Bangalore. And it also means more traffic to Bangalore too. So we got to deal with it. And the good thing about it is it is actually good for the economy because they are trying to automate. They're trying to make the customers' lives more easier and more beautiful. So here is how enterprises are changing. Every enterprise perspective, what is becoming is the customer is being the center of their universe. it is super important for them to optimize their experiences for the customer. Now, there are many things around it. There is customer satisfaction. If you actually just see, I don't know, I never imagined that we can actually order a car from phone, right? Today, you can just open the Tesla car. You can order a Tesla car from phone, and it will be delivered to your doorsteps. That's phenomenal. That's how the industry is changing. So here are the key parameters that I am just seeing the industry transformation perspective. One is customer satisfaction. Second one is the customer speed. Like if a customer has a feature request, how quickly you are turning around delivering is super important. If you don't deliver it, it is possible if we look for other set of tools that are available, right? So enterprise IT has to think about enterprise IT, developers, everybody has to think about some of these factors. Is your system scaling up to the requirements? Is your system resilient to the changes that are happening? Like just now, I just didn't realize that, I didn't carry the port. So that's the resiliency. That's a learning. We just need to always make sure that your systems are resilient for any kind of failures. And cost is super important. And cost from many perspectives. Cost from the internal IT perspective, cost from the COGS perspective, cost from how much money I'm charging to the customers or how much discounts I can give to the customers so that I can reduce it. These are all super important factors that every enterprise IT need to consider it when they are trying to move from the existing new way of working. And this is the speed of changes that are happening in the industry. We got to accommodate, we got to change. DevOps is one of the tools that can actually help this transformation. So I don't know how many people know about the DORA metrics. Have anybody heard about DORA metrics? Right. So the DORA metrics actually talks about the high performers and the low performers. Now, if you look at the high performers, 66% of the high performers that are practicing DORA better are spending time adding new customer value than spending time on customer issues, supports. That's phenomenal. We actually want most of our developers to be spending as much as time possible on the new work than on the unplanned work or customer support issues. That's when we all will be productive. That's when we all can deliver more results. So if you practice DevOps in the right way, it helps in delivering better products, it helps in delivering faster and happier customers, and it gives for the enterprises more engaged teams, or it helps them in getting more business metrics to be moved. So from that perspective, I'll just see how many people have seen this kind of error message. Yeah, pretty much everybody have seen this message, right? If this message is seen, it actually means either some part of your application is not working, or your entire application is not working, or one microservice is not working. Are there developers here? Okay, there are few. Are there developer managers here? Okay, are there IT people here? Okay. So you see this message because there is a change that was done, right? That change could be, done completely, following all the processes, or sometimes it can happen because you're not following the process too. So the mistakes always happen, right? The most important thing is how quickly you can recover from this mistake and then bring it back to the state all the customers are looking for. This is what is called an incident. At the incident time, how do you quickly react is super important. Now, let me just tell you a story that we have seen in the product. Like, once this change happened, and because of this change, customers started seeing this issue in the admins and settings, right? And obviously, it's a developer change that he has done. And admins and settings, obviously, the blast area, or the number of people who will go to that is lesser compared to the overall product. Now, he got to know that his admin section is not working. It is assigned to one of the developers. And developers, talks to the IT, gets the required logs. And he figures out that he actually, delivered a new change or a new feature. And in this new feature, he used the latest module, right? One of the latest version of the module, because he has taken a dependency on it. And that module is not getting loaded because in the common framework, they continue to use the older module. Now what he does, obviously he has customer obsession. He says, I want to fix this issue immediately because it is my feature. And he goes ahead and then, in the common framework, he completely updates to the latest module of the version. And because the change is done in the common module, obviously it will have more surface impact. Then he goes to the IT and then says, hey, I have a life site incident. I want to manage it. Here is my change. Can we deploy it? And just like IT, he says, no, can you follow the process? Should we first deploy to product staging and make sure everything works and then take it to the production, right? He says, no. We have this issue. Many customers are complaining about it. My admin area is not working. Can we deploy this fix immediately? So IT did the right thing. Developer did the right thing. And they both went and talked to the managers. And then they said, yeah, go ahead, deploy it. So they bypassed the process. And while deploying, IT again asked a question saying that, hey, should I deploy to one region? Should I deploy to multi-regions? So typically, your application, any of the applications, will be replicated and available to every region. And some places, maybe your application settings, the way that run in India will be different, Europe will be different, US will be different, right? And because he said, no, it's impacted everywhere, my change is rolled out, go ahead, deploy everywhere. Now what happens, because this change he has done is completely fundamental into the common framework, forget about the admin area, the entire site goes down, right? Entire site goes down. Now think about it. The number of people who are accessing admin were very less, but now the entire site means, maybe people who are trying to sign in are broken, people who are trying to purchase are broken, people who are trying to register are broken. So that's a significant change. So in this simple story, there are many DevOps practices that are completely broken, right? The first one is there is a change management process. Never take shortcuts to the change management process, right? Speed and quality. If you try to go optimize for the speed, at some places you will pay a price. You got to be very cautious about that, right? The second thing is about the IT guy actually just asked him saying that should I deploy to all regions? You should never ever take a change directly to all the regions. Taking a change to all the regions, the impact is significant. Multi-region issue or incident is a lot more bigger than one region incident because you can learn from it. And third thing is when the issue was happening in admin and settings, because of the changes that were done, he may not be knowing about it and he cannot test across the board. You need to have a system that is actually helping him to take care end to end. So those are all the key learnings that are there from any small incident that can happen. Now let me just talk about DevOps. Now I'll just focus primarily from Microsoft perspective. We just now learned why DevOps is super important and how Microsoft is using this DevOps practices and then transforming. That's where I will spend time. This is how we think about DevOps from our perspective, right? We think DevOps is the union of people, process, and products to enable continuous delivery of value to your end users. This is the practice that we try to do inside Microsoft, and we very clearly say it involves people. The people can be, top leadership all the way to the engineer. Everybody need to know the transformation and then the cultural changes that need to be done. It is super hard to do some of these cultural changes. Topo was also, talking about it. I'll cover some of the slides, how we try to achieve those. There is no one rule. And second one is about the process, right? The process I just talked in the previous example about, everybody establishes a process and you can just follow the process as is or try to tweak it based on your requirements. Never ever take the old wine into the new bottle, right? When you are trying to do the transformation, you always need to look at what is the best way for us to achieve it. So the process need to be identified and defined. The third thing is the products, right? It does not matter. You choose a technology or a product that helps you to be successful, right? It can be anything. At some places, it can be GitHub Enterprise with Jenkins, with Jira. At some places, it can be Azure DevOps. There are many tools that are available. Use the tool, like, build your own DevOps is a phenomenal, example he talked about. Build your DevOps tools based on your requirements. There is no single good product about it. It is about your requirements, whichever tool matches best, you got to adopt and then use it. And the last two important things here is continuous delivery of value to end users. And the value here means we always need to look at customer value and business value. Both are important. Do not focus on one value because the customer value is what you're actually giving to the end users. The business value is what as your enterprise is getting. And the practices with respect to customer value that we try to adopt is hypothesis and customer-driven development. Every change that you are doing, make sure there's a hypothesis that is defined. Make sure there are a set of customers that you have identified it. You cannot build, unless you are doing a new innovation, completely a breakthrough product, without talking to the customer, do not build features or products. Because, you may not find users, and it may not add value to the business. Right now, from business perspective, once you think you have identified and added the feature, you now need to look at how exactly my business metrics are moving because of this change. Whatever feature area, whatever is the scenario that I'm building, is it reducing my costs? Is it increasing my adoption? Is it increasing my revenue? Is it signing up more users? We actually need to know that alignment and then try to do it. And second thing, when you're doing customer value, don't go with big bang. Always go with small chunks, because it is easier for you to build it, measure it, and learn from it and iterate over it. So this is about the customer value and business value. And continuous delivery, I think, Topopal covered a lot more in detail. Automation is super, super important, right? Without automation, it is hard. And reduce lead time, right? The lead time includes either the customer feedback or idea is generated, all the way to it is deployed and available to the customers, right? So today that lead time can be in months, days. How do you reduce it, right? That's where DevOps actually helps you. That's where the continuous delivery helps you. The automation is super important for us to see it. And risk management should be integral part of your delivery. Do not keep risk management outside. And the risk management can be anything. It can be a software failure. It can even be a hardware failure. It can be a people not being available. We need to look at all of these very clearly so that we can do a good job of continuous delivery. Now let me just cover at a high level some anti-patterns, and then I will go into Microsoft practices. Like everybody just thinks we are doing DevOps already, but they may not be practicing full-fledged setup. They may not be doing Agile. They may not be following CI. They may not be doing CD. They may not be doing any of these. But they just say we follow our, I know, DevOps, we are already practicing DevOps. No, DevOps means it has a transformation that is needed with respect to, all the three, process, people, and products, right? And you need to follow the most of the cultural changes that are needed for you to be successful. If you just say, I'm just doing one part of it, I do hear some people come back and then say, hey, I'm practicing Agile. That means I'm already, DevOps compliant. No. If you do not have your pipelines or some of them not automated, if you do not know how do you measure MTTR, how do you want to get your site back online very quickly, then you may not be practicing DevOps completely too. So you need to know, you need to define those. The second thing is about creating layers or creating a DevOps teams itself. This is completely anti-pattern. In fact, one of the stuff that I just keep hearing. Previously, we used to have Dev and Ops teams. Now they just added another team to this called a DevOps team. So now there is a Dev, there is a Ops, there is a DevOps team. No, that does not work, right? That's completely anti-pattern. And also here, people having different complete hierarchy levels with respect to the Dev organization, IT organization, or Ops organizations too. Those won't fly too. These are all anti-patterns. People think we are practicing it, but these are all some of them. And this one we actually just talked a lot, speed over quality. Right? People try to do speed. Speed is important, but quality is a lot more important than speed. Right? Do not ever optimize for quality or customer satisfaction. You can ship faster, but if nobody is using it or if your stuff is broken, your business metrics won't be met. So that is the reason I'm just saying when you measure it, the customer value and the business value are very important. All right. Now I'll talk about how did Microsoft transform. We will talk about some examples, some learnings of how we are adopting the tools, the processes, the culture for our transformation. And is this transformation can be done in a day? Can this transformation be done in months or years? Transformations takes a lot of time, and primarily cultural transformations. I think he asked a question, right? Which is the toughest one? Culture, changing people is the biggest transformation. So the key questions when we started thinking about is scale at Microsoft when there are 30,000 engineers, is this transformation possible? How do we see the success? How do we measure the success? Can we even, be successful in achieving this transformation? And, how do we measure it? Do we know, whether we are being successful? If you look at it, typically, if I go back a decade ago, most of our products, Microsoft products, we used to ship once in 3 years. Once Office used to ship once in 2 years. Windows used to ship once in 3 years. The products that I used to work on Visual Studio used to take 2 years or 3 years to ship. And we used to have services. They used to take, once in 3 months, once in 6 months to ship. Now we wanted to change the transformation. With cloud and technology, it is super important for you to deliver faster and then to make sure that you are enabling the customer request as early as possible. So if I compare 3 years to now, I think the journey of transformation started around 2010 or 2011. In fact, when Satya joined Microsoft, I think Satya just mentioned saying that I want to bring in best minds in the company. Best minds in the company to work on this engineering system, which is going to help every Microsoft developer to be super productive. Right? In fact, he just mentioned, I will invest more on my internal engineering system so that my developers can be productive than adding features to Windows or adding features to Azure or adding features to Office. Because once you build your engineering system much better, the value that it can provide to every developer in Microsoft, the productivity it can provide will be significantly higher. So now, I will just talk about, few numbers. Like, today we do, so this is as of March 2019, but 442K pull requests per month. We just completely adopted Git as our source control system, and 442K, pull requests per month is significant. And, to tell you, one more important number is 82,000 deployments. I was just talking, we used to ship once in 3 years. 82,000 deployments per day, right? Almost, it's equivalent to there is one deployment in the company that is happening every second, because there are 86,600 seconds per day. 82,000 deployments, we would have crossed that number now. But that's the transformation that we have done. And again, number of deployments is not a metric that you should always look at. It's about how fast you are delivering it. But these are some of the indicators. These are some of the indicators that will tell you, what is the right thing to do for your company. So with that, I will get into few learnings, right? The DevOps journey is a long one, really long one. And we have, been gone through this transformation. We continue to learn from it. But these are some of the key things that at least, we thought is useful for everybody to practice, everybody to learn more about our experiences. What did we do? What did we learn? What did we change? Right? And we are learning day by day, and then we keep actually changing this every time. We just talk about it. Sometimes we used to have 3, then we made it 5. There are 7, there are 9. We keep triaging it. So the learning continues. DevOps transformation journey is never complete. If you think it is complete, that means you are not improving yourself. You can be a lot more productive on a continuous basis. So I'll just pick some of these examples, talk about some of our stories, what we changed. So the first one I'll get into is be customer obsessed. Like, I talked about the initial picture of every enterprise should keep customer as their top priority. Now, what does it mean, right? And I'm taking one example. Every product in Microsoft, uses different ways for them to learn and then transform. I'm taking our product, right? One of the products that we work on, Azure DevOps. And how do we measure? How do we listen to our customers? How do we change continuously is what I will talk about it. So you got to listen to your customers. And you got to listen to your customers both quantitatively and qualitatively. One way is not good enough. So we have many inputs that we get for our product. We have something called developer community, right? Now you guys need to find a forum, equivalent of this for your product too. So in developer community, customers come and then ask us questions, or give us issues, or give us feedback, right? This is similar to user voice, but primarily to our product. We actually just to go through this. Every issue that gets reported here goes into our backlog. The second one is about Stack Overflow, right? We go look at the Stack Overflow. The product team is responsible to track Stack Overflow and answer questions. If a customer is asking a question there, that means multiple things. It may be, the feature is not discoverable, or the feature is not built properly, or the feature is not even documented. right? So that it is available to the customer. So it is super important for us to think about what is the problem here? Why is customer, asking this question? Maybe the experience is not intuitive at all. That means we got to now go back and then rethink, how do I make this experience seamless, built in the right way for customers? And build in-product feedback. We have an in-product feedback built in where you can actually just give the feedback about the product. And then we measure NPS. NPS is Net Promoter Score. This is about the satisfaction. Do people like about your product, right? And there is a comments too. The product team reads all of these comments, right? Every comment that we get here is an input to us. These are all the ones that we should just look at from customer perspective. What he is thinking about my product? What do I need to change in my product? What is working, not working? And we also have top customers, right? We literally have champions for these top customers. We talk to them on a continuous basis, learn from them. Which part is working for you? Which part is not working for you? How do we learn from it? How do we make sure that, your satisfaction remains higher? And then there are a bunch of telemetry that we track. And the most important thing is the definition of done, right? So this is a significant change that we have done in our culture with respect to how do you say your feature is done, right? Many people think the feature is done, when the developer perspective, my coding is complete. Or my coding is complete, I have given it to testing team. Our testing is complete, given it to the ops team. Our ops team is deployed to it. No, I don't think, that's how it works. I think our definition of done, we have changed from, coding is complete to the feature should be available live in the production, and it is collecting telemetry that the feature is being used, and it is either supporting or invalidating the hypothesis. That's why I just talked about the customer value. You got to track, create hypothesis and then make sure that hypothesis is getting validated or not. Only then you can call your feature as done, right? The feature is not done, if the coding is complete and then given to or even deployed into production. A feature is complete only when you think it is done, it is getting used, and you have got actually the feedback which tells you this is the right way to build the feature or this is not the right way to build the feature. It can be invalidated too. That's perfectly okay, right? Because you just thought based on your interactions with the customers, you thought this is the way to build the feature, but maybe that's not the right entry point, or maybe that's not the right color to use for a button. It's fine, right? You want to get that feedback and validate that feedback appropriately using the telemetry that needs to be defined. So that's the first learning. Being customer obsessed is super, super important for you. You got to understand, in our case it is developers, so that's why we look at various developer forums to look at it. But for your product, for your feature, think what customer channels that are there. Talk to every customer channel so that you can hear from your customers, because at the end of the day, you got to deliver value to your customers. Now the second one is iterate over pain. I think Paul also covered it, right? When you are doing this DevOps transformation, it is a long journey. You cannot say it is just going to be done in 3 months or 6 months or year or 2 years. You will continuously need to learn, right? You need to understand for this sprint what worked, what did not work for me, what are the big pain points. Pick the pain point, the most pain point, or which is stopping you from delivering value to your customers. Whichever are the top pain point, pick it up. And sprint over sprint, every sprint, see whether you are improving and making sure that the pain point is going away, right? Iterating over multiple sprints is the only way you can achieve. There is no DevOps in the box as you just put it together. It is about the requirements, the stuff that is needed for each enterprise, for each company can be different. You got to figure out what is it for you and iterate over pain. And for us, I'll just talk about, how did we do, what problems we faced, and then, what worked for us, what did not work for us. I think one of the biggest thing is, we used to have 500, developers, and we used to have master. This is 4 years ago or 5 years ago. Everybody used to create a feature branch and then say, oh, let me just add this feature and then, merge it into the master. And once you fork from the master, for your feature to get merged into it, it takes 3 days. 3 days is a lot. In 3 days, your master can just completely be different when you are working on 500 developers, right? Super hard, not going to work, right? Then In our case, what we found is most of developers were spending time, doing this merge help, solving merge conflicts. You do not want your developers to be, solving merge conflicts. Let the system take care of it. But you put a process. Now, again, it's just not going to be done easily. If 500 people on a daily basis, they are committing to master also, and it's not going to be easy. Like, we started configuring branch policies. We started making sure that, every topic branch change should not be, more than 24 hours old, right? It has to get into the master immediately. And we have to keep master clean always, so that I can just pick any point of the time and then deploy it. So this significantly helped us get out of that merge help, right? So this is about, developers are precious, our developers are, most of the engineers are expensive resources. You want to use these expensive resources for the work that, they are hired for, right? Use the cloud systems. Let the automation take care in helping, them to do pull requests, automatic builds. How can you just do automatic builds on the branches on a continuous basis? How can you run automatic tests, somewhere in the cloud so that they are not spending all of their time doing it, right? How can we just, in the previous example talked about, how can we just have a pipeline that is available where, the ID guy just said, why don't you follow the process so that, you can deploy it, but the process takes 3 days, right? He was worried, the developer was worried, that's why he just rushed into it. But it takes 3 days because the end-to-end automation was not done. Assume you use the power of the cloud or technologies or the tools that are available automated. You can get feedback on your code change in 20 minutes, 30 minutes, or an hour based on what kind of a change that you are doing. So that's one of the learning that we had. Third one is production first mindset, right? Production first mindset is super important. And what does production first mindset means? And I'll just go back to the same issue that exists, right? And it was hard. This is the cultural change that needs to be done in the team, right? The most important thing that we just talked about is if there is a life site issue that is going on, or if there is an incident that is happening in the product, the team or the developer or whoever is the person responsible, he should immediately stop working on features, bug fixes, or whatever he is doing, and make sure he investigates it. That's the cultural change that we need to bring in, because the customer is super important. Think about, if GitHub is down. Think about, if, our Office 365 site is down. People will not be able to get their mail, or if GitHub is down, you will not be able to commit your code. Right? There are many people's productivity is going to be lost across the world because there are millions of users who are using it. So live site is top priority. It is super important. And we actually recommend root cause everything. Right? If you get an issue, you got a root cause. And that root cause will help you get learnings. Right? The learning can be simple learning. That learning can turn it into a tool change. It can turn into a process change. But that learning is important. You got to learn from those. And every fix, the LSI stands for live site incident. Those, if any fixes that are needed, they actually need to again go back into the backlog. You learn from it. If you don't put them into the backlog, that's again not a recommended approach. The next one is actionable alerts. Like, it is very important for you to configure alerts for what is happening. It does not make any sense if a customer picks up a phone and then calls you saying that, hey, by the way, your site is down. Right? That means you already lost the credibility. You would have lost many dollars, millions of dollars, credibility. And companies take at risk. Sometimes there are financial implications too when you are working with some of the bigger companies. So you got to configure alerts, and those alerts should help you. You can categorize the alerts. You can have severity 2 alerts, severity 1 alerts, severity 0 alert, right? And severity 0 alert means we have a big problem. Severity 1 means, hey, there is maybe the VM, the CPU is spiking, our memory is spiking. Severity 2 means, oh, there is some change that has happened. I was expecting the numbers to be at this level, but there is a change. So potential severity 2 alerts might become severity 1 or severity 0 going forward. So you got to divide those alerts and then make them very actionable. And many times you even get a lot more severity 2 alerts. We actually just look at it, right? And then say, are we having too many severity 2 alerts? Do we need to convert them, appropriately, make it more actionable? You got to look at that. That's the change that we have, brought in. And we have the review that happens on a continuous basis. We actually do a root cause of all of these. And in fact, one of the stuff Topopol was talking about is, initially when we started, we say, why did this issue happen, right? And when you ask the question of why did this issue happen versus what happened, what can we learn from it? Like just the question changing from why did it happen, who made it, to what happened, what did we learn from it? Significantly changed the culture. That's where the leadership also need to figure it out. It is never a blame game. It is about learn. Right? You can learn from every incident that happens. And there is a cultural change. It is the entire team is in it together. Right? Entire team is in it together to solve this. Okay, I'm just running out of time. Maybe I'll just go a little faster. The next one is team autonomy and enterprise alignment. This is a big one, right? In the cultural changes, like the production first mindset is a different cultural change too. In fact, we do have people who get a pager or their calls. They have to pick up at 3 a.m., get up, immediately open your laptop, start looking at why the issue happened, right? So that's one big cultural change. How do we make people accountable for it? The next one is autonomy and enterprise alignment, right? What does this mean? So the paradox is always the speed, innovation are inversely proportional to reliability and control, right? Speed and control are hard. We also just talked about the example. If you try to go run super fast, then you lose control, and then there are reliability risks that you run into. Now, is there a balance for it? It's very tricky. It is super hard for us to achieve this balance. This balance might mean different for many people. There is no single answer that is available. But from our perspective, what we started looking at it, like, this is the transformation again we have done in the last 5 years. We used to have purely in the product team, we used to have a program management team, development team, and testing team. And there were clear responsibilities that were there. And as I just talked about, one of the anti-pattern is developer used to code and then throw it over the wall, and then test has to pick up, he has to test it and then deploy it. Now, if there is a mistake, who has done the mistake? It was super hard because people were pointing fingers than owning the problem and taking it forward. Then we said, hey, this model is not working. Let's just have engineering team and ops team. And obviously, again, this causes problems, right? This is same. The engineering team now just picks it up and then pushes it to ops. This also didn't work. Then what we realized in our case is, can we have a feature team? At the end of the day, this feature team is responsible in delivering value to customers, right? This feature team contains everybody. They own the feature scenario together, right? There are no boundaries. There are no layers that are there. A feature team together owns the feature or scenario that needs to be done. This is one of our big learnings, and then now this is the structure that we really follow. Like, we have a very clear feature teams. They are responsible for delivering some of the scenarios that are needed for customers. And so I talked about org structure is one. The next one is, I talked about alignment with respect to the control. What do? Right? Planning is another biggest problem, right? Can we, we want to provide autonomy to the feature teams, but we also want to make sure that it aligns with the product strategy, company strategy, or business goals that we want to deliver. So we started doing, the leadership is responsible for providing the strategy, and the strategy can be, in 12 months what needs to be delivered. And that we again break it down into 6 months what need to be delivered, right? So that's what is the responsibility of the leadership team. Now, every feature team that I actually just talked about, they take the data, they convert into quarter by quarter, right? So there are 2 quarters. What should I deliver for Q1? What should I deliver for Q2? Now, the same every quarter, again, we take it into sprints, and every sprint is 3 weeks. How do I just deliver, 3 weeks? In every 3 weeks, how do I just continuously deliver value? This is one of those, stuff that worked for us. I think, based on your product requirements, it can be different. You can have even 1 week sprints. You can have even 2 weeks sprints, right? And you can have 4 week sprints too. Like, what works there is completely, up to your requirements and, your business requirements. You can customize it. But this is one way we were achieving it, right? We have provided to some extent responsibility and accountability to the team, but the leadership is in control because they are looking at what is happening in every sprint, right? We review what happens in every sprint. We review what happens in every quarter. And then we see, is it aligned with my 6 months? Is it aligned with my 12 months? The next thing that, how many people heard about OKRs? Phenomenal concept. If you have not read this book, go read Measure What Matters, right? This talks about objectives and key results. In a simple example, objective is the goal that you want to achieve in a year, right? In a year or 18 months, depending on whatever works for you. Then you will have key results. These key results can be your customer value or business value that I talked about. Define your results based on the business value you want to achieve or the customer value that you want to achieve. Be very crisp so that they all can be measurable, right? We just gave some sample examples here with respect to, what does it mean for us. Once you define these, it provides, clarity to the entire team, right? At the product level, at each team's level. And we use this. And then we also explicitly make sure that our KRs, our key results are ambitious. Do not say that, hey, it's fine, I will just achieve it, I will keep it realistic. We keep it, like if you keep it ambitious, the teams can innovate. They actually know how to figure out and then stretch themselves and then achieve that result, right? Keep them as ambitious as possible. But tell them, hey, by the way, I think the goal, if you hit 70%, I think, it's a good result. But always try to be ambitious. And how do we achieve alignment, right? So we define these OKRs at the product level. And for each service, and there are microservices architecture or at the product level, you can break down into areas. Now define these at each area level. And the same thing now define it to the team level too, the feature team level. Now what this is providing is every, the product level OKRs is, maybe you will have 5, but that is actually a high level summary of all the service OKRs which are super important and which you want to track at the product level. Now for each service or area level, it will again get broken down into multiple teams OKRs too, right? This provides full alignment all the way up to the top so that you now know why you are doing it. Like if you explain this to everybody saying that why you are doing a feature, how it actually impacts the business goal, you will get a phenomenal motivation from the team because they now understand why am I working on this feature? How does it add value to Microsoft or whatever business goal? I think if you define this, you're providing autonomy for them with respect to the execution, and you have an alignment also that is done. You can actually now track what is happening, how do I see the result? Okay. The last one is the shift left. Shift left to quality. Quality is super important. I just talked about we deploy on a continuous basis, but if you don't have quality, it is hard. How do you continuously measure and then shift left is important. So when we started our journey looked something like this. We take all our tests and divide into L0, L1, L2, L3. L0 is nothing but unit test, right? L1 is it requires, so L0 doesn't require any deployment, right? You just have the build binaries available. You can just do the validation. L1 requires a SQL to be available. L2 means, because there are many microservices, how do I make, service-to-service API calls and validate it? L3 is full environment end-to-end test. Now, when we started, we used to have only L3 tests. There are no L0, L1 tests. And L3 tests are not stable, flaky. And, I don't know how many people say, oh, we see a test failure. Say, oh, it's a known issue. Have you guys heard about it? Right? The test issue is a known issue. And how can you trust it? Then you are doing daily deployment. If you see a test failure on every day, and then you are saying known issue, you are ignoring it, is not good. That's not going to help you. How do you identify real failure when it happens? Like I don't know how many people know about the story of a bear and a kid lying, right? It's the same. You build the test, but if those tests are not being efficient, helping you, there is no point in having tests. And one of the biggest problem with your L3 test is this. So we wanted to migrate to L0, L1, L2, L3. I'll go fast. And so roughly the M78 is a milestone. We just track how exactly our numbers have changed. M78 is 2.5 years ago, and M120 is a year ago. Like you can just see that the orange bar has significantly diminished, and then the blue bar has just taken over. This is again a big cultural change. Making developers write unit. Are there developers here? How many developers write unit tests here? Oh, good. There are few people at least, right? So that's the biggest problem, right? How do you make developers write unit tests? People think, oh, writing unit test is not, useful. But when you make actually the feature team that I talked about accountable for it, you don't write unit test, you get a call at 3 a.m. and then you have to wake up and then try to take up the call and help the customer, you will realize the mistake, right? In our case, I think those are all the transformations. And the next important thing is leadership is bought into this, right? So one of the key change, the transformation that need to happen is writing test code is also one of the jobs, and then you will get rewarded. You got to make sure your tests are stable and then good. If leadership is bought into it, if they are encouraging you to do it, then that's exactly what people look for. That's a cultural change that need to happen everywhere. So we are now here, and I'll just skip that. So at the bottom line, so that's what is the shift left. It is very important for you to think about how do you increase this quality. This is how we run. Today we have 89,000 tests that run in every pull request, right? I was just talking about into the master. We commit on a daily basis, and then the timeout today is 12 hours, right? Within 12 hours, your change that you have done with the build should be immediately merged into the master. And 89,000 rough tests that we run in every pull request, and the entire cycle of pull request takes roughly 30 minutes, because that's also important. Can I submit a pull request, go for lunch, come back, can I get feedback on what my code changes? So those are all at a high level transformations that we have done. So DevOps is not a magic. It's about time, it's about people, it's about process. You got to spend the time doing this transformation, and everybody with this transformation can become unicorns. It is not for startups, it is for everybody, right? Every enterprise can transform too. Like, I want you just to go back and then look at where are you in your DevOps journey, right? What practices, how much progress you have made, and what metrics do you have to track it, and learn, note down real key changes that you have adopted. What did it give you? Iterate over pain. I think everybody can just overcome this. And before I just stop, I think I am just provided you a very condensed session of the Microsoft DevOps transformation. I think Divya has a session where she's actually going to talk in detail about it with a lot more details and screenshots. I definitely encourage everybody to go attend that session. And I have only 22 seconds. I don't know whether I can take questions, but I'll be in the booth available. Thank you. All right, okay. So he's asking, what are the 2 questions that I can ask?
Yeah.
Okay. Assume there is an incident that happens. What is the first thing that needs to be done if there is an incident that happens?
All right, we can have you, sir, yeah, with the striped shirt. You can, just hand over the mic to him, please.
Okay, create incident. Are there better answers? Okay.
Understand the issue and then escalate.
Okay, escalation. That also makes sense, okay.
Stop new development and take the incident first.
Okay, makes sense. Okay, inform the customer too. Okay, there. It should go to the backlog first. Okay, I'm just still looking for a better answer. Yes. The most important thing you should look at when the incident happens is
Please
that
let's have you on stage, sir.
You've got to think about how do I mitigate it. The mitigation can be a simple rollback. You can just roll back the change that was done, because you can add it to the backlog later. You can create an incident at later point, because some of those can be automated. The most important thing is.
Thank you.
Let's have a big round of applause, everybody, for this gentleman.
So
Okay.
it's very important to immediately think about that, right?
Okay, we have one more question for the audience.
The next question, in the cultural change, who all need to be bought off for you to achieve this transformation?
No. We just want people to raise hands first. Okay.
Okay. I'll
Yeah.
ask a different person.
Yes, sir.
Senior leadership, developers, the customers also. I feel some of the key customers as well to be involved in this, and we have to be careful about competitors and partners as well. Okay.
So it is a open source ecosystem,
Okay, that makes sense, but I'm just looking. Senior management. Okay, I don't know. There. Feature team. Okay, I'll ask her. That's the right answer. Everybody has to be bought into the cultural change,
Okay, let's have you on stage, ma'am.
right? It's not just senior management is not good enough. Like we want the engineer, IT, ops,
Please, tell us
docs,
your name.
designers.
Hi, I'm Shilpi.
All right, let's have a big round of applause for Shilpi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. So we have room for just 2 question answers for Gopinath. If any of you have a question, please raise your hand. Yes?
One question, do you do test-driven development or do you write test cases after implementation?
Okay, so the question that he's asking is, do you do test-driven development or do you implement test after development? We don't quite, follow the test-driven development, but I think one of the stuff that we do is, whenever you submit a PR, it's not even after development. Every PR, pull request that you submit should include the developer code and also the corresponding test. That's how we try to achieve. So in the PR has an approval, and whoever is the PR approver, he'll actually just go through it. If there are no tests, he'll go back and then tell them saying that add appropriate test. Then only I can approve and then merge it.
Okay, let's have one more question.
Yeah, I have a question here.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Akshay Sharma. I'm going to be one of the lightning speakers next. In Topu's presentation, he mentioned bimodal is dead. And I wanted to get your opinion. I'm a former Gartner analyst, and I actually agreed that bimodal is dead when I was at Gartner. So I was just wondering what.
Sorry, ask the question again.
Bimodal. Topu mentioned bimodal is dead, and I wanted to get your perspective.
Bimodal or?
Bimodal, where you have like 2 separate teams.
Oh, I see,
or
okay.
Legacy ALM, like waterfall lifecycle management, and then the DevOps being
Right.
siloed tools, siloed metrics, siloed everything. Personally, I feel it leads to conflict, leads to different sets of agendas, and what I'll be talking about in my lightning round is concurrent multimodal IT, a potential solution.
Yeah, so this is a hard question. There's no right answer. But what we do at Microsoft, or what we try to practice at Microsoft, I will tell you. Like one of the key policy that we follow is you write your, whoever writes the code owns it, right? So in that particular perspective, assume I have built a feature, which is even legacy or older, I am responsible for it, right? Until I change. But we also try to make sure everybody has the new innovative work or the new features that they are working on, but they will continue to own the features that they have built before too. We continuously follow this process on a continuous basis because most of Microsoft products have a support of 10 years minimum, right, with respect to enterprises. It is super hard for us to just say, yeah, it is done, and let's put it in complete maintenance. We try to make sure that if there is a product team that is responsible for it, some part of the product team in a feature team owns this. That includes legacy, that includes new features, that includes performance improvements or any of those. That's the model that we try to follow.
All right, thank you, Gopi, for that wonderful session. Let's have a big round of applause once again for Gopi. And for all the people who have more questions for Gopi, you can connect with him offline during the networking breaks that we have throughout the day. So please do so. And before we move on, can I please request Sharmila ma'am to please join us on stage and felicitate Mr. Gopinath CH with a certificate and memento.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Gopi, for joining us.